Ask the Passengers by A.S. King is a novel about a girl named Astrid Jones. She's a senior at Unity Valley High School who loves the humanities, especially philosophy, and bitterly resents her small town's pernicious insincerity. Throughout the novel, she wrestles with her newfound homosexuality as she navigates her relationships with her family, her friends, and with her girlfriend Dee. I think that despite its best efforts, this book presents more single than counter stories. In my picture, I drew all the characters, aside from Astrid and Frank Socrates, in boxes because throughout the book, Astrid notices the dichotomous boxes that people tend to put themselves and others in. She mentions on page 256, I'm not questioning my sexuality as much as I'm questioning the strict definitions and boxes of all sexualities and why we care so much about other people's intimate business. The world is made up of clear definitions, she continues on page 257, which is exactly why Socrates was put to death. People didn't like him messing with their clear definitions, you know? She hesitates to call herself gay because she knows that once she's out, people, regardless of their own sexualities, will assume that her entire personality is all about her sexuality instead of it just being one part of her personality. Frank Socrates, a modern-day reimagining of Socrates, is Astrid's imaginary friend who eavesdrops during important parts of her life in the novel. His very existence may be seen as a counterstory since teenagers aren't expected to have imaginary friends. Astrid remarks, I take a second to think about him, and I decide he's my new hero. Not because he shows up in my life and talks to me when I want him to, but because of who he was and what he stood for. On page 246. However, he disappears after the Socrates project because he and Astrid both believe that she doesn't need him anymore. This growing up is somewhat of a single story since Astrid never does outgrow her habit of sending love to airplanes from picnic tables. This is why I also included a drawing of an airplane. One single story in the novel is Astrid's lack of piety. Her story would normally be expected to set up the church against the LGBTQ plus community. Instead, I do admit, her family presents a counterstory. Although they are somewhat uneasy about her newfound sexuality, they aren't religious. Neither are they very influential in the town. Astrid remarks, I thought we all knew that our bad reputation has been building in this town, birdhouse by birdhouse, but hey, I guess we can blame everything on me now. On page 168. I drew Astrid's mother holding an iron, representing the ironing the curtains scene. I drew Astrid's sister Ellis holding a hockey stick because she's on the local team, and I drew her dad holding a pipe to represent his addiction, which is mentioned often in the novel. Another single story is the relationship of Astrid's two friends, Justin and Christina. According to Astrid, they have been doing this dating thing since mid-sophomore year, on page 6. In most small towns, like Unity Valley, high school sweethearts are often perceived as married couples, for all intents and purposes. However, Justin and Christina are both secretly gay, so their relationship is very similar to a lavender marriage. This is somewhat of a counterstory of high school sweethearts, but it is definitely a single story of social expectations in a small town. I drew the two characters in 1950s attire because of Astrid's sarcastic inner commentary on their double dates. It's so cute, isn't it? It's so 1950s, she says on page 5. Yet another single story is the gay bar, Atlantis. After sneaking out with Christina and Justin to Atlantis, Astrid sees what the LGBTQ plus community is like in her town, the polar opposite of the rest of the town. There, Astrid met a lively older lady who was the life of the party. She notes that all of the people at the bar put out their hands for high fives, and some pat her on the ass or hug her, or some duck down and kiss her. It occurs to me that people here are nice to each other, she says on page 72. This event perpetuates the single story of homosexual gatherings being fun but wild, aimlessly erotic places where literally anyone can flirt with you or pat you on the butt, as mentioned here. While Dee is Astrid's real best friend on page 31, her horny shit or get off the pot attitude towards Astrid, mentioned on page 117, helps perpetuate this single story too. It adds to the ever-growing list of things demanding Astrid to choose a side, sadly. My biggest hurdle in completing this project was getting over the fact that I don't have much background info on the novel's subject, LGBTQ students. I felt that since I've never been a part of that community, I'm not really in a place to analyze this book. I was scared that I would say something that was either completely inaccurate about the book or boringly predictable. But that goes against the very purpose of the novel's writing, telling one person's story to someone else, to an outsider. I understand that parts of it may be replications of an LGBTQ single story, but it's a story nonetheless. It's a start.